Bea Mitchell never thought her own home would become her enemy. But at 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday in October, every smart device in her Portland townhouse began a coordinated assault on her sanity. Lights strobed like a nightclub, the thermostat plunged the temperature to 55 degrees, and Alexa started playing death metal at maximum volume while her 2-year-old daughter slept upstairs. This wasn't a glitch. Someone was watching. Someone was controlling. And they knew exactly when she was most vulnerable. What Bea discovered over the next 3 months would expose a web of digital stalking so sophisticated that even tech experts were stunned. The person behind it had access to her most private moments, could manipulate her environment at will, and seemed to know her daily routine better than she did. But the most chilling part? They were family.
Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you.
6 months earlier, Bea Mitchell's life looked nothing like the nightmare it would become. At 28, she was a successful marketing coordinator for a sustainable clothing brand in Portland, Oregon, living in a charming 3-bedroom townhouse in the Hawthorne district with her husband, Marcus, and their daughter, Emma. The house was Bea's pride and joy, a 1920s craftsman she'd convinced Marcus to buy and modernize with every smart home feature imaginable. Bea had always been tech-savvy, a trait that set her apart in her friend group. While others struggled with basic smartphone functions, she had transformed their home into something from a sci-fi movie. Smart locks responded to her fingerprint and phone proximity. Nest cameras monitored every entrance. Philips Hue lights adjusted automatically based on time of day and occupancy. The Ecobee thermostat learned their preferences and adjusted temperatures room by room. Even the garage door, security system, and sprinkler system were connected to her smartphone through a central hub. "You're going to regret making our house so complicated," Marcus often joked, though he appreciated coming home to perfectly adjusted lighting and temperature. Marcus was more traditional, a 32-year-old accountant who preferred physical keys and manual light switches. But he indulged Bea's passion for automation because it made her happy, and because, admittedly, it was pretty convenient. Their daughter, Emma, barely 2 years old, was just beginning to walk and talk. She had Bea's curious brown eyes and Marcus's stubborn streak. The smart home features were particularly helpful with a toddler. Bea could check the nursery camera from work, ensure the house was the right temperature for Emma's sensitive skin, and even play lullabies through the smart speakers during nap time. Bea's daily routine was precisely calibrated to work with their home's technology. She'd wake at 6:30 a.m. to the gradual brightening of their bedroom lights. Coffee would be brewing downstairs, started automatically by a smart plug connected to their programmable coffee maker. While Marcus got Emma ready for daycare, Bea would check the security cameras from her phone, review the previous night's motion alerts, and adjust the day's schedule through various apps. Work at EcoThreads, the sustainable fashion company, was fulfilling but demanding. As the lead marketing coordinator, Bea managed social media campaigns, influencer partnerships, and brand collaborations. Her colleagues respected her digital expertise. She was the go-to person for any tech-related marketing tools or automation strategies. The irony wasn't lost on her that she spent her days promoting sustainable, mindful living while surrounding herself with dozens of internet-connected devices. Evenings followed a similar pattern of technological integration. Bea would arrive home to lights that had automatically turned on as her phone approached the house. The security system would disarm itself, recognizing her presence. Dinner prep was simplified by smart appliances, a programmable slow cooker, connected oven, and even a smart fridge that could suggest recipes based on its contents. Marcus's family had always been a complex dynamic in their relationship. His older brother, Derek Mitchell, was a 35-year-old IT specialist who worked for a cybersecurity firm downtown. Derek was brilliant with computers, but had always harbored an obvious resentment toward Bea. While Marcus was outgoing and emotionally available, Derek was intense, socially awkward, and seemed to view Bea as an interloper who had stolen his brother's attention. Family dinners at Marcus's parents' house in Beaverton were tense affairs. Derek would make subtle digs about Bea's spending habits, her career choices, or her parenting style. He had a particular disdain for her smart home obsession, calling it privacy suicide and corporate surveillance cosplaying as convenience. When Bea tried to engage him in conversations about technology, thinking it might be a common ground, Derek would respond with condescending lectures about digital security that made her feel foolish. You have no idea what you're exposing yourself to. Every one of those devices is a potential entry point. But I guess convenience matters more than privacy to some people. Marcus would usually deflect these moments with humor or change the subject, but Bea could see the strain it put on him. He loved his brother, but was increasingly protective of his wife and daughter. The first cracks in Bea and Marcus's marriage weren't dramatic or sudden. Like many couples with young children, they began to drift apart under the pressure of work, parenting, and maintaining a household. Marcus worked long hours during tax season, often not coming home until Emma was already asleep. Bea felt increasingly isolated, handling most of the childcare and household management while trying to advance her career. Their conversations became functional rather than intimate. Did you schedule Emma's pediatrician appointment? Can you pick up groceries? The mortgage payment went through. They were roommates, managing a shared life rather than partners nurturing a relationship. The smart home features that once delighted Bea began to feel hollow when there was no one to share them with. The automated routines continued flawlessly, but they highlighted how mechanical their life had become. Lights would turn on for romantic dinners that never happened. The thermostat would adjust for cozy evenings spent on separate devices in separate rooms. By spring, they were sleeping in the same bed, but living separate lives. Marcus had started working even longer hours, claiming it was necessary for a promotion he was seeking. Bea suspected he was avoiding home, avoiding the conversations they needed to have about their failing marriage. The breaking point came during Emma's second birthday party in May. It should have been a celebration, but instead it became a stark illustration of how disconnected they'd become. Bea had planned everything meticulously: decorations, food, entertainment, even a synchronized light show through their smart home system. Marcus arrived late from work, barely participating in the festivities, checking his phone constantly. After the guests left and Emma was asleep, they finally had the conversation they'd been avoiding. "I feel like I'm raising Emma alone," Bea said, sitting at their kitchen island while Marcus cleaned dishes with mechanical efficiency. "You're not alone. I work to support this family," Marcus replied, not looking up from the sink. Supporting and participating are different things. When's the last time we had a real conversation? When's the last time you seemed happy to be home? Marcus finally turned to face her, and Bea saw exhaustion in his eyes. "I don't know how to fix this, Bea. I don't know how to make you happy anymore." "I'm not asking you to make me happy. I'm asking you to try to be happy with us." But they both knew it was too late for simple solutions. The love was still there, buried under months of resentment and neglect, but the relationship had become unsustainable. They agreed to a trial separation in June. Marcus moved into a furnished apartment across town, and they began the painful process of establishing a custody arrangement for Emma. Despite their personal failures, both were committed to co-parenting effectively. They agreed on alternating weekends and one evening per week for Marcus's visits. Living alone in their smart home for the first time, Bea experienced a mixture of relief and loneliness. The house felt too big, too quiet, despite all its connected devices. She found herself talking to Alexa more than she'd ever talked to another person, asking for weather updates, music, and reminders just to hear a voice respond. The automated routines she'd programmed for a family of 3 now felt ghostly. Lights would turn on in Marcus's home office at his usual arrival time, even though he no longer worked there. The coffee maker still brewed enough for 2 people each morning. Motion sensors detected movement in empty rooms, creating phantom activity logs that made the house seem haunted by their former life. But there were advantages to the separation.
Bea could focus on work without managing Marcus's emotional distance. She could parent Emma without the tension of an unhappy marriage filling the house. And the smart home features, ironically, made single parenting more manageable. She could monitor Emma's room from anywhere, automate bedtime routines, and ensure the house was secure without having to physically check every door and window. Derek's reaction to their separation was surprisingly intense. During one of Marcus's custody handovers in July, Derek had appeared at the house unannounced, ostensibly to help Marcus collect some belongings. "I always knew this would happen," Derek said to Bea while Marcus was upstairs packing. "You never appreciated what you had." "This is between Marcus and me," Bea replied, maintaining her composure despite feeling uncomfortable with Derek's presence in her home. "Everything affects Marcus, and that means it affects me." Derek's tone was possessive, almost threatening. "Some people don't deserve second chances." After that encounter, Bea made sure Marcus handled all communication about custody arrangements. She didn't want Derek inserting himself into their personal business more than necessary. By late summer, their separation had settled into a routine that worked reasonably well. Marcus would pick up Emma every other Friday evening and return her Sunday afternoon. Thursday evenings, he'd come for dinner and bedtime stories. Despite their failed marriage, they were managing to provide stability for Emma. Bea had even started to imagine what her future might look like. She was considering dating again, thinking about career advancement opportunities, and appreciating aspects of single life she hadn't experienced since her early 20s. The smart home that had once symbolized her domestic aspirations now represented independence and control over her environment. She had no idea that someone was already inside that environment, learning her patterns, mapping her vulnerabilities, and preparing to turn her technological sanctuary into a digital prison. The stage was set for a nightmare that would make her question everything she thought she knew about privacy, security, and family. But for now, in those final weeks of August, Bea Mitchell felt like she was finally taking control of her life. She couldn't have been more wrong.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. The first sign something was wrong came on a Thursday evening in late September, during what should have been a routine custody handover. Marcus was running 20 minutes late to pick up Emma for their weekly dinner, which wasn't unusual, but when Bea tried calling him, her phone displayed an error message she'd never seen before. Network authentication failed. She assumed it was a carrier issue and tried again, but the same message appeared. Her home Wi-Fi showed full signal strength, yet none of her apps would load. The smart home dashboard that usually displayed real-time status updates from every connected device was completely blank, showing only a spinning loading icon. "Alexa, what time is it?" she called out, bouncing Emma on her hip while troubleshooting her phone. Silence. The Echo Dot's LED ring remained dark. Bea walked to the living room where their main Echo Show usually displayed weather, photos, and calendar reminders. The screen was black. She pressed the power button, but nothing happened. Moving through the house, she discovered that every smart device appeared to be offline. The Nest thermostat showed no connectivity, the Philips Hue lights wouldn't respond to voice commands, and even the smart doorbell seemed dead. This was more than a simple Wi-Fi outage. Bea had redundancies built into her system precisely to avoid this kind of total failure. Her mesh network had multiple access points, and most devices had backup connectivity options. For everything to go down simultaneously suggested a more serious problem. Emma started crying, sensing her mother's growing anxiety. Bea tried to maintain her composure, singing softly while she investigated. The cable modem appeared to be functioning normally. All the indicator lights were green and steady. Her laptop could connect to the internet through Wi-Fi, but somehow none of the smart home devices could establish connections. Marcus arrived just as Bea was on hold with her internet service provider, Emma's diaper bag slung over his shoulder, and an apologetic expression on his face. "Sorry, traffic was insane downtown," he said, then noticed Bea's frazzled state. "Everything okay?"
My whole smart home system crashed, Bea explained, handing Emma over while keeping the phone pressed to her ear. Nothing's working. It's like someone just flipped a switch and disconnected everything. Marcus bounced Emma playfully, making her giggle. Maybe it's a sign you should simplify things. People lived without automated everything for thousands of years. Under normal circumstances, Bea might have laughed at his gentle teasing, but she was genuinely unsettled. This isn't normal, Marcus. These systems are designed with multiple fail-safes. For everything to go down at once? She trailed off as the customer service representative finally answered. After 20 minutes of basic troubleshooting, unplugging and reconnecting the modem, checking cable connections, running speed tests, the technician concluded that Bea's internet service was functioning normally. The problem appeared to be with her home network configuration. "Have you made any recent changes to your router settings?" the technician asked. "No, nothing. I haven't touched the router in months." Sometimes firmware updates can cause connectivity issues with IoT devices. I'd recommend factory resetting your router and reconfiguring your network. The prospect of reconfiguring dozens of smart devices made Bea's head spin, but she agreed to try it. After Marcus left with Emma for their evening together, she spent 3 hours methodically resetting and reconnecting every device in the house. By 11 p.m., everything appeared to be working normally again. Lights responded to voice commands, the thermostat displayed proper readings, and her phone apps showed all devices online and functional. Bea attributed the outage to a random technical glitch. Frustrating, but not unprecedented in the world of connected devices. She went to bed relieved that the crisis was resolved, unaware that someone had spent those 3 hours carefully studying her network configuration, device passwords, and security protocols. Every step she had taken to restore her system had been monitored and logged by an intruder who now had comprehensive access to her digital life. The harassment began subtly, almost imperceptibly. Over the next week, small anomalies appeared that could easily be dismissed as normal technical hiccups. The living room lights would occasionally flicker during Emma's afternoon naps. The smart doorbell would chime once, briefly, usually when Bea was in the shower or otherwise indisposed. The Alexa would sometimes activate without a wake word, listening for a few seconds before going dormant again. Bea had mentioned these glitches to her coworker Sarah during their lunch break at a trendy cafe in the Pearl District. "Technology is great until it isn't," Sarah said, scrolling through her own phone while picking at a kale salad. "My smart TV has been turning itself on at random times. I think these devices just have quirks." But it's multiple devices having issues at the same time, and it only started after that big outage last week. Maybe the reset didn't fix everything properly. You could try calling tech support again. But Bea was hesitant to spend another evening on hold with customer service for what might be minor software bugs. She made a mental note to research the issues online when she had more time. The problems escalated the following weekend during Marcus's custody visit. Saturday morning, when Bea was enjoying her first leisurely breakfast alone in months, every smart speaker in the house suddenly activated simultaneously. "Good morning, Bea," they announced in unison, their synthetic voices creating an unsettling echo throughout the empty house. "The time is 8:47 a.m. You have no scheduled appointments today." She nearly choked on her coffee. "Alexa, stop," she commanded, but the devices continued their synchronized announcement. "The weather today is partly cloudy with a high of 72 degrees. Perfect for staying home alone." The emphasis on alone sent a chill down her spine. She grabbed her phone and opened the Alexa app, frantically trying to silence the devices remotely. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they went quiet. Bea sat in her kitchen, heart racing, trying to rationalize what had just happened. Smart speakers were known to activate accidentally, responding to sounds that resembled wake words. Multiple devices activating simultaneously was unusual, but not impossible, and the alone emphasis was probably her imagination. Text-to-speech systems didn't have emotional inflections. But the content of the announcement troubled her. How did Alexa know she had no appointments? Her calendar was synced to the device, but she had never programmed it to announce her schedule unprompted. And the comment about staying home felt oddly specific and personal. She spent the morning reviewing her smart home settings, looking for any configuration changes that might explain the behavior. Everything appeared normal. Voice activation sensitivity was set to default levels. No new skills or routines had been added. No scheduled announcements were programmed. Sunday evening brought a new type of disturbance. Marcus was returning Emma after their weekend together when the smart lock on the front door began cycling rapidly, locking and unlocking every few seconds with audible mechanical clicks. "What's wrong with your door?" Marcus asked, standing on the porch with a sleepy Emma in his arms. Bea tried to override the lock using her phone app, but it showed an error message. Device temporarily unavailable. She resorted to manually turning the deadbolt from inside, but even that felt stiff and unresponsive. "I think the smart lock is malfunctioning," she said, taking Emma from Marcus. "I'll have to call the manufacturer tomorrow." "Or you could just use a regular lock like normal people," Marcus suggested, not unkindly. These smart gadgets seem to cause more problems than they solve. After Marcus left, Bea examined the lock mechanism carefully. There were no obvious signs of tampering or damage. The battery indicator showed adequate power, but when she tested it again, the same rapid cycling behavior resumed. This was no longer a series of isolated glitches. Too many devices were malfunctioning in ways that felt almost intentional. The timing was suspicious. Problems seemed to occur when she was alone or during vulnerable moments like showering or sleeping. That night, Bea decided to document everything. She created a detailed log on her laptop, noting the date, time, and nature of each technical anomaly. If these were genuine malfunctions, the documentation might help tech support identify patterns. If something else was happening, she wanted evidence. Monday brought an escalation that shattered any remaining belief in coincidental technical problems. Bea was working from home, participating in a video conference about EcoThread's holiday marketing campaign, when every smart display in her house began displaying the same image, a photograph of her sleeping. The photo had been taken from above, showing her in bed with her hair spread across the pillow and wearing the old college t-shirt she used as pajamas. It was recent. She recognized the book on her nightstand and the way her new sheets were arranged. Panic flooded her system as she realized the implications. Someone had access to her security cameras. Someone was watching her sleep. The image was displayed on her Echo Show, iPad, smart TV, and even the small display on her smart refrigerator. She quickly muted her microphone and turned off her camera for the work meeting, claiming technical difficulties. Her colleagues' voices became background noise as she frantically moved through the house trying to shut off the displays. "Alexa, turn off screen," she commanded, but the device didn't respond. The photo remained visible on every screen, a violation so profound it made her feel physically sick. She started unplugging devices, yanking power cords from walls with shaking hands. The smart TV went dark, the Echo Show powered down, but as soon as she plugged them back in, the photo reappeared. Someone wasn't just accessing her smart home system, they had taken control of it. They could see into her most private spaces, manipulate her environment, and display whatever content they chose. The person doing this wanted her to know they were watching, wanted her to feel exposed and helpless. She called the police. Officer Jennifer Rodriguez arrived within an hour, a veteran patrol officer who listened patiently to Bea's explanation while taking detailed notes. Rodriguez was professional and sympathetic, but Bea could see skepticism in her eyes. "Have you given anyone access to your smart home system? Ex-boyfriends, contractors, family members?" "No, only my ex-husband, Marcus. But he wouldn't do this. He barely knows how to use the basic functions." "What about other family members? Anyone with technical expertise?" Bea hesitated, thinking of Derek's cybersecurity background and his obvious dislike of her, but accusing her brother-in-law without proof seemed like a dangerous step. "Marcus has a brother who works in IT, but I can't imagine," she trailed off,
unwilling to voice her suspicions. "I'd like to get some information about him, just for our records," Rodriguez said gently. Reluctantly, Bea provided Derek's full name and workplace. Rodriguez made notes, but explained that without direct evidence of criminal activity, there was little the police could do immediately. "Smart home hacking is becoming more common," Rodriguez said. "I'd recommend changing all your passwords, contacting the manufacturers of your devices, and maybe consulting with a cybersecurity professional." After the officer left, Bea sat alone in her living room, surrounded by devices that no longer felt like conveniences. They were potential windows for a stalker, tools that someone was using to invade her privacy and terrorize her peace of mind. She thought about Derek's warnings about digital privacy, his condescending lectures about security vulnerabilities. Had he been preparing her for this moment? Had his expertise given him the knowledge to orchestrate this campaign of technological harassment? The photograph was still burned into her memory. The intimate violation of seeing herself sleeping, displayed throughout her own home by someone who wanted her to know they could see her at her most vulnerable moments. This wasn't random. This was personal. And it was just the beginning. As evening approached and she prepared for Emma's return the next day, Bea realized that her smart home, once her pride and joy, her symbol of modern convenience and control, had become a prison. Every device was a potential spy. Every automated function a possible weapon against her peace of mind. The catalyst had been triggered. Her digital nightmare was about to begin in earnest.
The next morning, Bea woke up to find her bedroom thermostat set to 85 degrees. Sweat soaked through her pajamas as she stumbled toward the device, but when she tried to adjust the temperature, the display showed "Remote override active, access denied." This was no coincidence. Someone was actively controlling her environment, making her home uncomfortable in deliberate, calculated ways. She grabbed her phone to check the smart thermostat app, but it displayed the same message. Every attempt to regain control was blocked. Standing in her sweltering bedroom, Bea made the decision that would define the next phase of her life. She was going to fight back. But first, she needed to understand exactly what she was dealing with. She spent her morning researching cybersecurity firms in Portland, looking for someone who specialized in smart home systems. Most companies focused on corporate networks, but she finally found Tech Secure Solutions, a boutique firm that advertised expertise in residential IoT security. The owner, Catherine Wells, agreed to meet with Bea that afternoon. Catherine was a former NSA analyst who had started her own practice after growing concerned about consumer privacy vulnerabilities. She arrived at Bea's house with a laptop bag full of diagnostic equipment and an expression that suggested she'd seen this type of harassment before. "Tell me everything," Catherine said, setting up her laptop on Bea's kitchen counter. "Don't leave out any details, no matter how minor they seem." Bea recounted the timeline of incidents, from the initial system outage through the surveillance photos. Catherine listened intently, occasionally asking clarifying questions about specific devices or time frames. "You're dealing with someone who has significant technical expertise," Catherine said after reviewing Bea's smart home configuration. "This isn't script kiddie stuff. Whoever is doing this understands network architecture, device vulnerabilities, and social engineering." Social engineering? Psychological manipulation through technology. They're not just accessing your devices, they're using them to control your emotional state. The temperature manipulation, the time disturbances, the surveillance photos displayed when you're most vulnerable. This person wants you to feel helpless and watched. Catherine began running diagnostic scans on Bea's network, her fingers flying across the keyboard as streams of code scrolled past on her screen. Within minutes, she found the first signs of intrusion. "Here's the problem," Catherine said, pointing to a section of network logs. "Someone installed custom firmware on your main router. It's sophisticated, designed to look like a legitimate manufacturer update, but it includes backdoor access that gives the attacker administrative control over your entire network." "How is that possible? I never approved any firmware updates." "They probably gained initial access during that system outage you described. While you were troubleshooting and resetting devices, they had a window to push the compromised firmware. You would have seen it as part of the normal recovery process." Catherine's analysis revealed the full scope of the intrusion. The attacker had root access to every connected device in the house. They could monitor all network traffic, access camera feeds, manipulate device settings, and even install additional malware on individual devices. The good news is we can fix this. The bad news is it's going to require completely rebuilding your network from scratch. New router, new passwords for everything, and updated firmware on every single device. How long will that take? If we work together, we can get the basics done today and finish the security hardening over the next few days. But Bea, I need to ask you something important. Do you have any idea who might be doing this? Bea hesitated, still reluctant to voice her suspicions about Derek. My ex-husband has a brother who works in cybersecurity. He's never liked me, and he's always been critical of my smart home setup. What's his name, and where does he work? Bea Mitchell. He works for CyberShield Technologies downtown. Catherine's expression darkened. I know that company. They specialize in penetration testing and security auditing. Someone with that background would definitely have the skills for this type of attack. She paused, considering something. Before we clean your network, I want to gather evidence of the intrusion. If we're going to pursue this legally, we need documentation of exactly what was done and when. They spent the next 3 hours methodically documenting the security breaches. Catherine created forensic images of compromised devices, captured network logs showing unauthorized access, and identified specific malware signatures. She explained each step to Bea, who took detailed notes despite feeling overwhelmed by the technical complexity. This is actually helpful for building a case, Catherine said, examining camera logs. Whoever did this was careful, but they left digital fingerprints. The malware includes metadata that might help identify its source. While Catherine worked, Bea called Marcus to explain the situation. She tried to keep her voice neutral, focusing on the technical facts rather than her suspicions about Derek. Someone hacked our smart home system, she said when Marcus answered. They've been watching me through the security cameras and manipulating devices remotely. That's terrifying. Are you and Emma safe? I think so. I have a cybersecurity expert here now, cleaning everything up. But Marcus, I need to ask you something important. Has Derek ever mentioned anything about my smart home setup? Any comments about vulnerabilities or security problems? There was a long pause. He's always been critical of all the connected devices. He thinks they're privacy risks. But Bea, you don't think Derek would actually... Marcus trailed off, unable to complete the thought. I don't know what to think, but the expert I'm working with says this required advanced technical skills. Someone with Derek's background could definitely do this. I can't believe Derek would stalk you. He's my brother. Just because he's your brother doesn't mean he's incapable of harassment. He's never hidden his dislike of me. Marcus agreed to have a conversation with Derek, though he could hear the reluctance in his voice. He understood his position. Derek was family, and accusing him without definitive proof would create irreparable damage to their relationship. But Bea's safety and Emma's security had to take priority.
By evening, Catherine had successfully cleaned Bea's network and implemented new security measures. The compromised router was replaced with a commercial-grade device with advanced firewall capabilities. Every smart device was factory reset, updated with the latest firmware, and secured with new, complex passwords generated by a password manager. Your network is now significantly more secure than most residential systems, Catherine said, packing up her equipment. But I need to be honest with you. If this person is as skilled as I think they are, these measures might only slow them down, not stop them completely. What do you mean? Advanced persistent threats, that's what we call sophisticated, ongoing attacks like this, are difficult to prevent entirely. The attacker has already demonstrated knowledge of your routines, your devices, and your vulnerabilities. They might find new ways to compromise your system. Catherine recommended additional precautions, covering cameras when not in use, using physical switches to disable devices during sensitive activities, and implementing a protocol for regularly checking device logs for signs of intrusion. Most importantly, Catherine said, document everything. Keep detailed records of any unusual activity, no matter how minor. If this escalates to legal action, you'll need comprehensive evidence. That night, for the first time in weeks, Bea felt a measure of control returning. Her devices responded normally to voice commands. The thermostat maintained comfortable temperatures. The security cameras showed only legitimate activity. She had taken the first major step in reclaiming her digital life. But her sense of security was fragile and short-lived. Wednesday evening, while Emma was playing with blocks in the living room, Bea received a text message from an unknown number. "New security measures won't help you. I know where you hide your spare key." Her blood ran cold. The spare key was hidden in a lockbox behind her garden shed, a location she had never mentioned to anyone except Marcus. If someone knew about it, they had been watching her house, learning her habits, preparing for physical access. Bea immediately checked the security camera footage from the past week, fast-forwarding through hours of recordings. There, on Sunday night, after Marcus had left with Emma, a figure in dark clothing appeared briefly at the edge of her backyard. The person was careful to stay mostly out of camera range, but for a few seconds they were visible near the shed. The image quality was poor due to nighttime lighting, but the person's height and build suggested it could be Derek. Bea's hands shook as she saved the video file and forwarded it to Catherine. Catherine's response came within minutes. "This confirms physical surveillance. You need to involve law enforcement immediately and consider staying somewhere else until this is resolved." But where could she go? Hotels were expensive, and staying with friends would mean explaining a situation that sounded almost paranormal to anyone unfamiliar with smart home technology. Most people would struggle to understand how someone could terrorize another person through internet-connected devices. More troubling was the escalation from digital harassment to physical surveillance. If Derek was willing to scout her property and learn about her physical security measures, what was his ultimate goal? Was he planning to eventually enter her home? The thought of him having access to her house while she and Emma were sleeping was unbearable. Bea called Officer Rodriguez and explained the new developments. Rodriguez agreed to increase patrol frequency in Bea's neighborhood and advised her to change the spare key location immediately. "We still need direct evidence connecting your brother-in-law to these activities," Rodriguez said. "The video shows someone in your yard, but we can't definitively identify who it is, and the text message came from a burner phone that's probably untraceable." "What kind of evidence would you need?" "Ideally, something that directly links him to the hacking activities or the surveillance. Digital forensics, witnesses, or physical evidence at his location." Rodriguez suggested that Bea consider applying for a restraining order, but warned that without proof of Derek's involvement, it might be difficult to obtain one. That night, Bea barely slept. Every sound outside seemed threatening. Every electronic beep from her devices made her jump. She had fought back against the digital intrusion, but the problem was evolving beyond technology into something more dangerous and unpredictable. Thursday morning brought a new level of psychological warfare. When Bea's alarm went off at 6:30 a.m., every smart speaker in the house activated simultaneously with a message that made her blood freeze. "Good morning, Bea. Emma looks so peaceful when she sleeps. I hope nothing disturbs her dreams." The implication was unmistakable. Someone was watching her daughter, thinking about her daughter, using Emma's safety as leverage in their campaign of terror. This had crossed a line that transformed harassment into something approaching a direct threat. Bea ran to Emma's room, where her daughter was still sleeping soundly, unaware of the sinister message that had just echoed through the house. The nursery camera showed no signs of tampering, but Bea no longer trusted any of her devices completely. She immediately called Catherine, who arrived within an hour with additional detection equipment. Their network security cleanup had been comprehensive, but somehow the attacker had regained access. This suggests either incredibly sophisticated skills or inside knowledge of your new security configuration. Very few people could have bypassed these protections so quickly. As Catherine worked to identify the new intrusion method, Bea made the decision that would accelerate her investigation and put her directly in harm's way. She was going to confront Bea Mitchell herself. The journey to reclaim her life and protect her daughter
was just beginning, and it would require more courage than she had ever imagined.
Bea's decision to confront Derek directly was born from desperation and maternal fury. The threat involving Emma had shattered any remaining hesitation about accusing her brother-in-law. She wasn't going to wait for more evidence or police investigations while her daughter remained in potential danger. Friday afternoon, she drove to Cyber Shield Technologies' downtown office building, a sleek glass tower in the South Waterfront District. She had no appointment, no plan beyond demanding answers, but she was determined to look Derek in the eye and gauge his reaction to her accusations. The reception area was sterile and modern, with black leather furniture and walls displaying cybersecurity certifications and awards. When Bea asked to speak with Bea Mitchell, the receptionist, a young woman with purple hair and multiple piercings, seemed surprised. "Derek doesn't usually take walk-in meetings," she said, checking her computer screen. "Can I ask what this is regarding?" "It's a family matter. I'm his sister-in-law." After a brief phone call, the receptionist directed Bea to the elevator. 15th floor, suite 1520. He'll see you for a few minutes. Derek's office was exactly what Bea expected. Multiple monitors displaying scrolling code, cybersecurity books lining the shelves, and various computer components scattered across his desk. He looked up from his keyboard as she entered, his expression shifting from surprise to something resembling amusement. "Bea, this is unexpected. How are you enjoying your newly secured smart home?" The comment hit like a physical blow. How did Derek know about her security upgrades? She had only told Marcus, Catherine, and the police about hiring a cybersecurity expert. "How do you know about that?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Derek leaned back in his chair, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Portland's cybersecurity community is small. Word gets around when someone hires Catherine Wells for residential work. Expensive choice for what I assume are basic connectivity issues." They weren't basic connectivity issues. Someone has been hacking my smart home system, watching me through my cameras, manipulating my devices. "That's terrible," Derek said, his tone suggesting anything but sympathy. "Any idea who might do such a thing?" Bea studied his face, looking for signs of guilt or deception, but Derek's expression remained neutral, almost clinical. Either he was innocent or he was an exceptional actor. "Someone with advanced technical skills, someone who understands network vulnerabilities and has experience with penetration testing. That describes half the people in this building. Cybersecurity professionals aren't exactly rare in Portland. Have you considered that your IoT obsession might have made you a target for random hackers? Smart homes are notoriously insecure." His casual dismissal of her terror infuriated Bea. "This isn't random. Someone sent me a text message mentioning my spare key location. They've been physically surveilling my house." For the first time, Derek's composure seemed to crack slightly. His eyes narrowed, and when he spoke, his voice carried a harder edge. "That sounds serious. You should probably call the police if you haven't already. Though I imagine they'll tell you the same thing I'm telling you. Smart homes are security nightmares waiting to happen." "I did call the police. I gave you your name." Derek's smile returned, but it was colder now. "I hope you have a good lawyer, Bea. False accusations can have serious legal consequences." The conversation was going nowhere productive. Derek was too skilled at verbal sparring, too prepared for her accusations. But Bea had accomplished one important thing. She had put him on notice that she suspected him. His reactions would be telling in the coming days. As she prepared to leave, Derek's phone buzzed with a text message. He glanced at the screen, and for just a moment, his expression showed something that might have been satisfaction or anticipation. "Everything all right?" Bea asked. "Just work," Derek replied, setting the phone face down on his desk. "You should get home to Emma. It's almost her dinner time, isn't it?" The casual mention of her daughter's schedule sent ice through Bea's veins. Emma's dinner routine was not something she had ever discussed with Derek. The only way he could know about it was through surveillance of her home and daily patterns. "How do you know Emma's schedule?" she asked. Derek's mask slipped completely for just an instant, revealing something predatory and malicious underneath.
Then the professional facade returned. Marcus mentions her routine sometimes. He worries about the custody transition affecting her eating schedule. It was a plausible explanation, but the timing and tone felt calculated. Bea left Derek's office with more questions than answers, but also with the conviction that she was dealing with her daughter's tormentor face to face. The drive home through Portland's rush-hour traffic gave her time to process the encounter. Derek had been prepared for her accusations, suggesting he had anticipated this confrontation. His knowledge of her cybersecurity consultant and Emma's schedule indicated ongoing surveillance that extended beyond her smart home system. Most disturbing was his comfort level with the situation. An innocent person would have shown concern or offered to help. Derek seemed almost pleased by her distress, as if her suffering was entertaining to him. When Bea arrived home, she found Marcus's car in her driveway. He was sitting on her front porch with Emma, who ran toward her mother with excited squeals about the playgrounds they had visited. "We need to talk," Marcus said, his expression grim. After getting Emma settled with her favorite TV show, Marcus and Bea sat at the kitchen table where they had once planned their future together. Now they were discussing their brother's potential criminality. "I talked to Derek yesterday after you called. He denied everything, of course. But Bea, there were things about his reaction that bothered me." "What kind of things?" "He was too calm, too prepared with explanations, and he asked questions about your security setup that seemed odd, like he wanted to know exactly what countermeasures you had taken." Marcus described their conversation in detail. Derek had probed for information about Catherine Wells' investigation, the new network security measures, and even Bea's daily routines under the guise of brotherly concern for Marcus's family situation.
"He also made some comments about you that crossed a line," Marcus continued, his jaw tightening. "Things about how you deserved to learn about real security and how some people need to be taught lessons about technology they don't understand." "Did he admit to anything directly?" "No, but Derek's always been manipulative. Even as kids, he could lie with complete conviction. He's also incredibly vindictive when he feels wronged." Marcus revealed something Bea had never known. Derek had blamed her for Marcus's emotional distance from his family. Derek believed that Bea had deliberately isolated Marcus from his relatives, encouraging him to prioritize his nuclear family over his extended family obligations. "It's not true," Marcus said quickly. "You never tried to control my relationships with family. But Derek convinced himself that you were the reason I didn't visit as often or include him in our decisions." This provided a motive that made sense. Derek's harassment wasn't random technological terrorism. It was personal revenge against someone he believed had stolen his brother's loyalty. The smart home system was just the weapon he had chosen to express years of accumulated resentment. That evening, as if to confirm their suspicions, the harassment escalated to a new level of psychological manipulation. Around 9 p.m., while Bea was giving Emma a bath, every device in the house began playing the same audio clips simultaneously. It was a recording of Emma crying, not current crying, but audio from several weeks earlier when she had fallen and scraped her knee at the playground. Bea recognized the specific incident because Emma had a distinctive way of crying when she was truly hurt versus when she was just frustrated. The sound of her daughter's distress echoing from every room in the house was traumatizing in a way that physical violence might have been easier to endure. Someone had been recording Emma without permission, storing those recordings, and now using them as weapons against Bea's mental health. Emma, still in the bathtub, heard her own crying voice and became confused and upset. "Mama, why am I sad?" she asked, not understanding how her voice could be coming from the walls. Bea quickly unplugged the nearest smart speaker, but the audio continued from other devices throughout the house. She ran through the rooms, yanking power cords and pressing mute buttons, all while Emma's recorded sobs created a horrifying soundtrack to her panic. When silence finally returned, Bea sat on her bathroom floor, holding Emma, both of them crying. Emma from confusion and fear, Bea from the realization that Derek's surveillance had included recording her daughter's most vulnerable moments. She called Catherine immediately.
This is escalating beyond harassment into psychological torture, Catherine said after hearing about the audio incident. The fact that he's involving Emma directly suggests he's trying to break you down completely. Catherine had been working on tracing the attack methods and had made disturbing discoveries. The malware in Bea's original system was more sophisticated than initially realized, capable of recording and storing audio and video for weeks before the obvious harassment began. He's been watching and listening to your family life for months, Catherine explained. The recent attacks are just the tip of the iceberg. There are hundreds of hours of surveillance footage and audio recordings stored on compromised devices. This revelation meant that Derek had intimate knowledge of Bea's personal conversations, daily routines, parenting challenges, and emotional states. He had been building a psychological profile to maximize the impact of his harassment campaign. Catherine also discovered that Derek had been accessing Bea's system remotely through a sophisticated botnet, a network of compromised devices that masked his true location and identity. Even when Bea's security was upgraded, he maintained access through backup infiltration methods that were nearly impossible to detect. He's been planning this for a long time, Catherine said. This level of preparation suggests obsessive behavior. You're not just dealing with a skilled hacker, you're dealing with someone who has spent considerable time and energy developing this attack. Saturday morning brought a new horror. Bea woke to find that someone had used her smart home's automation features to create a detailed schedule of Emma's activities. The information was displayed on her tablet, formatted like a daycare report, showing feeding times, nap schedules, playtime activities, and even potty breaks. The data was accurate and current, derived from motion sensors, smart cameras, and audio recordings throughout the house. It was presented as if Derek was Emma's caregiver, documenting her development and daily care with clinical precision. The implication was chilling. Derek was positioning himself as a surrogate parent, using technology to insert himself into Emma's daily life in ways that felt profoundly invasive and inappropriate. This crossed every boundary of acceptable behavior and confirmed that Derek's obsession had evolved beyond harassing Bea into something that directly threatened Emma's safety and psychological well-being. The complications were multiplying faster than Bea could address them. Derek had months of surveillance data, sophisticated technical capabilities, and an obsessive focus that showed no signs of diminishing. Traditional security measures were proving inadequate against someone with his skills and preparation. Bea realized that defensive strategies weren't going to be enough. If she wanted to protect Emma and reclaim her life, she was going to have to go on the offensive against a predator who had every technological advantage and no apparent moral constraints. The stakes had never been higher, and time was running out. Sunday morning arrived with an ominous calm that Bea had learned to distrust. No devices malfunctioned during her morning routine. No threatening messages appeared on her screens. Even Emma seemed to sense the unusual quiet, playing more subdued than usual while Bea prepared breakfast. The silence felt like the eye of a hurricane, a temporary reprieve before something cataclysmic. At 11:30 a.m., while Emma was down for her nap, Bea's doorbell camera detected motion at the front door. She checked the app expecting to see a delivery driver or neighbor, but the camera feed showed only static. Every attempt to refresh the image resulted in the same gray, pixelated screen. When she looked out her bedroom window, she saw Marcus walking up her front path with an expression she had never seen before, a mixture of devastation and barely controlled rage. "We need to talk immediately," he said when she opened the door. His voice was tight with emotion, and she noticed his hands shaking slightly. "What happened? Is everything okay?" "Derek is gone." Bea's heart skipped. "Gone? What do you mean gone?" Marcus sat heavily on her couch, running his hands through his hair in a gesture she recognized from their worst marital arguments. "We cleared out his apartment sometime Friday night or Saturday morning. His landlord called me this morning because Derek left without notice and his rent check bounced." "Did he say anything to you? Any indication he was planning to leave?" "Nothing, but Bea, there's more." Marcus pulled out his phone and showed her a series of text messages. "I've been getting these since yesterday evening." The messages were from Derek's number, but the content was unlike anything the controlled, calculating Derek would normally send. "Your wife destroyed our family. Some people deserve what's coming to them." Emma should know who really cares about her. Distance won't protect them. This isn't over. Each message felt like an escalation, showing Derek's psychological state deteriorating as his harassment campaign was exposed. The mention of Emma in the context of threats made Bea feel physically sick. I tried to call him back, but his phone goes straight to voicemail, Marcus continued. I drove to his apartment and his office. His coworker said he took indefinite personal leave on Friday afternoon, right after someone visited him. Bea realized Derek's disappearance was a direct response to her confrontation at his office. She had pushed him into a corner, and instead of backing down, he had chosen to escalate into something more dangerous and unpredictable. Marcus, I think my visit on Friday triggered this. He knew I was onto him, so he's gone underground. Underground? What does that mean? Before Bea could answer, every smart device in her house activated simultaneously, but instead of the coordinated harassment she had grown accustomed to, this felt different, more chaotic, more desperate. Lights throughout the house began strobing in rapid patterns that could trigger seizures. The smart TV cycled through channels at impossible speeds while the volume climbed to maximum levels. Both Alexa devices started speaking simultaneously, but in different languages, one in Spanish and one in what sounded like German, creating a cacophony of synthetic voices. Emma woke up screaming from her nap, terrified by the sensory assault. Bea ran upstairs to comfort her, while Marcus frantically tried to unplug devices throughout the house. "The breaker box," Bea shouted over the chaos. "Cut the power to the whole house." Marcus ran to the basement and threw the main breaker, plunging the house into sudden, blessed silence. Only the sound of Emma's crying remained, and even that began to subside as Bea held her daughter close. In the quiet darkness, Bea's phone buzzed with a new message from Derek's number. "You can't hide in the dark forever." The message included an attachment, a photograph taken from inside Emma's bedroom during her nap, showing the little girl sleeping peacefully just minutes before the chaos began. The image was timestamped during the power outage, which meant Derek had physical access to battery-powered cameras or recording devices inside their home. "He's been in our house," Bea whispered to Marcus, showing him the photo. "He's installed additional surveillance equipment that doesn't depend on the smart home network." The realization that Derek had been physically inside their home, in Emma's bedroom while they were away, was the most violating thing Bea had ever experienced. It meant nowhere was safe. It meant he could have done anything, installed more cameras, planted listening devices, even poisoned food or tampered with medications. Marcus immediately called 911 while Bea packed an emergency bag for herself and Emma. They couldn't stay in the house another night, not with the certainty that Derek had unrestricted access and was becoming increasingly unstable. Officer Rodriguez arrived within minutes, accompanied by 2 other patrol officers and a detective from the cybercrime unit. Detective Sarah Chen was a specialist in digital stalking cases who had worked with Catherine Wells on previous investigations. "This has escalated beyond harassment into breaking and entering with intent to stalk," Detective Chen said after reviewing the evidence. "The combination of digital infiltration and physical access creates a credible threat that justifies emergency protective measures." The police conducted a thorough search of the house, discovering 3 additional hidden cameras in Emma's room, the main living area, and Bea's bedroom. The devices were sophisticated, battery-powered units that could record for weeks and transmit data via cellular networks independent of the home's Wi-Fi. "These aren't consumer products," Detective Chen observed, examining one of the cameras. "This is professional-grade surveillance equipment, probably military or law enforcement surplus. Your brother-in-law has access to tools that most hackers could never obtain." The discovery of the hidden cameras provided the evidence police needed to issue an arrest warrant for Derek. His disappearance now constituted fleeing to avoid prosecution rather than simply taking a vacation. A BOLO alert was issued to law enforcement agencies throughout Oregon and Washington. But Derek's technological expertise and head start meant finding him would be challenging. He understood how to avoid digital surveillance, had probably prepared false identities, and possessed the skills to continue his harassment from anywhere with internet access. That evening, Bea and Emma stayed in a hotel near the Portland airport, far from their usual neighborhood, and selected specifically because it had minimal smart room technology. Even so, Bea covered the TV, unplugged the digital clock, and used tape to block the peephole in their door. Emma was confused by the sudden change in routine, but seemed to sense the seriousness of the situation. She stayed close to her mother, speaking in whispers, and kept asking when they could go home. "Soon, baby," Bea promised, though she had no idea when that might be true. Around midnight, Bea's phone rang with a call from an unknown number. Against her better judgment, she answered. Derek's voice was barely recognizable, strained, paranoid, and filled with a hatred that made her stomach turn. "You think you've won something," he said without preamble. "You think involving the police will protect you? Derek, you need help. This has to stop. It stops when you admit what you did to this family. It stops when you face consequences for stealing Marcus from us." "I never stole anyone. Marcus made his own choices about our relationship." "You manipulated him. You isolated him. You turned him against his own blood." Derek's voice was rising, becoming less controlled with each sentence. "And now you're poisoning Emma against her family too." The delusion in his words was terrifying. Derek had constructed an alternate reality where Bea was the villain and he was the wronged party seeking justice. No amount of rational conversation could penetrate that level of self-deception. "Where are you, Derek?" Bea asked, hoping to keep him talking while she signaled Marcus to call Detective Chen. "Closer than you think. Farther than they'll ever find me. I've been planning this for longer than you know." The line went dead. Within minutes, Detective Chen called back with disturbing news. The call had been routed through multiple VPN servers, making Derek's location untraceable. But more concerning was what digital forensics had discovered about the extent of his surveillance. "He's been monitoring your family for over 18 months, long before your separation from Marcus. The malware we found includes keyloggers that captured every password, every private conversation, every personal detail of your lives." Derek had recordings of Bea and Marcus's most intimate conversations, including their discussions about marriage problems, financial concerns, and parenting decisions. He had been present digitally for every private moment of their relationship's dissolution, feeding off their pain like a psychological vampire. Tuesday morning brought the breaking point Bea had been dreading. She woke in the hotel to find that Derek had somehow accessed the room's limited smart features during the night. The digital thermostat had been set to extreme cold, the automated curtains were programmed to open and close every few minutes, and the smart alarm clock was set to go off every hour with maximum volume. More disturbing was a message displayed on the room's smart TV: "Hotels won't protect you. New identities won't protect you. I know who you really are." Derek had found them despite their precautions, demonstrating that his surveillance capabilities extended beyond their home. He was tracking them in real time, probably through their phones, credit cards, or other digital footprints they couldn't eliminate. Emma woke up confused and frightened by the malfunctioning room systems. "Mama, why is everything broken?" she asked, and Bea realized that her daughter was beginning to associate technology itself with fear and chaos. That morning, sitting in a hotel bathroom with Emma, while Marcus stood guard outside, Bea reached her absolute breaking point. The constant fear, the invasion of privacy, the threats against her daughter, and the realization that Derek could reach them anywhere had pushed her past her psychological limits. She found herself hyperventilating, crying uncontrollably, trying to comfort a confused toddler who didn't understand why their lives had become so frightening and unstable. Emma patted her mother's face with small hands, saying, "It's okay, Mama," which only made Bea cry harder. This was what Derek wanted, to break her down completely, to make her feel helpless and defeated. He was succeeding. But in that moment of complete despair, holding her daughter in a hotel bathroom while hiding from a technologically omnipresent stalker, Bea made a decision that would change everything. She was done running. She was done reacting. She was done letting Derek control their lives through fear. If Derek wanted a war, she was going to give him one, but it would be fought on her terms, with her rules, and it would end with him in prison and her family finally safe. The breaking point had been reached. Now it was time to break back.
Bea's transformation began in the most unlikely place, a 24-hour internet cafe in southeast Portland that looked like it hadn't been updated since 2005.
After leaving the compromised hotel Tuesday morning, she had insisted on finding somewhere completely disconnected from modern smart technology to plan her counterattack. The cafe was perfect. Old desktop computers, no smart devices, no Wi-Fi networks broadcasting to nearby devices, and a cash-only policy that left no digital payment trail. Most importantly, it was staffed by a conspiracy theorist owner named Jerry, who believed that all modern technology was government surveillance, and was therefore sympathetic to someone trying to avoid digital tracking. "You're running from someone with tech skills," Jerry observed, noting how Bea carefully examined each computer terminal before selecting one in the back corner. "Smart choice coming here. These machines are isolated from everything modern. Can't track what ain't connected." While Marcus took Emma to a nearby park, far from any smart playground equipment or digital monitoring systems, Bea began researching Bea Mitchell with the systematic thoroughness of someone whose life depended on understanding her enemy. What she discovered changed everything. Derek's employment history revealed a pattern that police background checks had missed. He had worked for 3 different cybersecurity firms over the past 5 years, leaving each job after what his LinkedIn profile euphemistically called ethical disagreements with management protocols. Digging deeper through news archives and industry forums, Bea found references to Derek being investigated for unauthorized access to client systems during penetration testing contracts. Nothing had resulted in charges, but there were enough complaints and incidents to suggest a pattern of boundary violations and abuse of access privileges. More disturbing were posts Derek had made on obscure cybersecurity forums under usernames she identified through his writing style and technical preferences. He frequently discussed teaching lessons to people who don't respect digital privacy and shared detailed methods for psychological manipulation through IoT device control. In one particularly chilling forum post from 8 months earlier, Derek had written, "The beauty of smart home infiltration isn't the technical challenge, it's the psychological impact. You can drive someone to complete breakdown without ever touching them physically. Fear of the unknown is more powerful than any direct threat." But Bea's most significant discovery was Derek's connection to an underground network of hackers specializing in domestic surveillance services. Through encrypted forum discussions, she found evidence that Derek had been offering his services to help people spy on spouses, children, and romantic rivals. He wasn't just stalking her, he was a professional predator who had turned digital harassment into a business model. This revelation sparked Bea's awakening. She wasn't dealing with a disturbed individual acting impulsively out of family resentment. Derek was a calculated predator who had systematically developed the tools and techniques to terrorize people through their own technology. She was just his most personal project. Understanding Derek's methodology gave Bea crucial insights into his vulnerabilities. Professional predators like Derek were confident in their superiority over victims, but they often underestimated people once those victims stopped reacting with fear and started responding with intelligence. She began mapping Derek's digital footprint with the same obsessive detail he had used to invade her life. Every forum post, every social media interaction, every professional connection became data points in her investigation. She was turning Derek's own surveillance techniques against him. By Wednesday afternoon, Bea had identified Derek's most likely hiding location, a remote cabin in the Mount Hood National Forest that belonged to a cybersecurity colleague named Travis Hoffman. Property records showed Hoffman had purchased the cabin 3 years earlier as a digital detox retreat, advertising it as completely off-grid with no internet, cellular service, or electronic devices. It was perfect for someone who needed to disappear while maintaining access to victims through portable satellite internet equipment. The isolation would appeal to Derek's paranoia, while the off-grid reputation would discourage law enforcement from searching there. More importantly, Bea discovered that Derek had made a careless mistake in his psychological warfare strategy. He had become addicted to real-time control and immediate gratification from his victims' fear responses. This compulsion made him predictable and created opportunities for anyone clever enough to exploit them.
Wednesday evening, Bea presented her research to Detective Chen and Catherine Wells during a meeting at an offline location, a community center conference room that had been selected specifically because it contained no smart technology. "This is impressive investigative work," Detective Chen said, reviewing Bea's documentation. "But we still need probable cause to search private property, even with this circumstantial evidence. What if we could get Derek to reveal his location voluntarily?" Bea asked. She outlined a plan that would use Derek's psychological profile and technical arrogance against him. Instead of hiding from his surveillance capabilities, she would deliberately provide him with false information designed to trigger specific behavioral responses. "Derek needs to feel in control," Bea explained, "but he also can't resist demonstrating his technical superiority. If we make him think he's winning while actually feeding him manipulated data, we can predict and control his responses." Catherine was intrigued but concerned. "You're talking about using yourself as bait. That's extremely dangerous, especially with someone whose mental state is clearly deteriorating." "He's already targeting me constantly. The difference is that now I want to control the engagement instead of just reacting to it." Bea's plan was complex but elegant. She would return to her house, but with carefully prepared modifications that would give Derek exactly the kind of access he craved, while secretly documenting his every intrusion. Hidden cameras, installed by police technicians and invisible to standard detection equipment, would record his remote activities. Network monitoring tools would track every packet of data he transmitted. Most importantly, she would use social engineering techniques to manipulate Derek into revealing his location and future plans. By appearing to be broken and defeated while actually being fully prepared, she could turn their psychological dynamic on its head. "Derek expects me to be afraid," Bea said. "He's built his entire strategy around my predictable fear responses. But what if I stop being afraid? What if I start acting like someone who's given up completely?" The plan required precise timing and flawless execution. Bea would appear to surrender to Derek's harassment while secretly gathering evidence that would lead to his capture. She would become the hunter instead of the hunted, using Derek's own psychological need for control as the trap that would ultimately destroy him. Thursday morning, Bea returned to her house for the first time since the breaking point. But this time, she wasn't running away from Derek's technological terrorism. She was walking into it deliberately, prepared and determined. The house felt different now that she understood the full scope of Derek's intrusion. What had once seemed like violations now felt like opportunities. Every hidden camera he had installed would now document his criminal activity. Every device he controlled would provide evidence of his ongoing harassment. Catherine had installed additional monitoring equipment that was invisible to Derek's detection methods. Every keystroke he made while accessing Bea's systems would be recorded. Every command he sent to her smart devices would be logged and traced back to his location. "Remember," Catherine said as she finished the final technical preparations, "Derek's greatest advantage has been that you didn't know he was watching. Now you know, but he doesn't know that you know. That information asymmetry is your primary weapon." Emma would stay with Marcus at a secure location until Derek was captured, but Bea would remain in the house as the focal point of an elaborate sting operation. Police surveillance teams were positioned throughout the neighborhood, and Detective Chen was monitoring the situation from a mobile command center. Most importantly, Bea's mindset had fundamentally shifted. She was no longer Derek's victim reacting with fear to his technological attacks. She was a predator using his own techniques against him, turning his obsession with control into the mechanism of his downfall. That evening, as Bea prepared for what she hoped would be the final phase of her nightmare, she received the message she had been expecting. "Welcome home. I've missed watching you." Instead of feeling fear, Bea smiled. Derek had just announced his presence to a comprehensive surveillance operation that would capture every detail of his criminal activity. His need to gloat and demonstrate control had made him vulnerable in exactly the way she had predicted. "I've missed you too," she typed back, knowing that Derek would interpret her response as submission, while police technicians interpreted it as confirmation that the trap was working. The awakening was complete. Bea Mitchell was no longer running from her nightmare. She was about to end it. For the first time in months, Derek Mitchell was the one who should be afraid.
The trap was set, but Bea knew Derek too well to expect a simple capture. His psychological profile suggested he would escalate dramatically when he sensed any threat to his control, and the next 48 hours would determine whether her strategy would save her family or provoke him into something catastrophic. Friday morning began with Derek testing her apparent surrender. At exactly 6:30 a.m., every smart device in the house activated with a coordinated wake-up routine that felt like a mockery of her former automated lifestyle. Lights gradually brightened, coffee began brewing, and Alexa announced the weather with synthetic cheerfulness. "Good morning, Bea." Derek's voice came through the smart speakers, but this time it wasn't text-to-speech. He was speaking directly through hijacked microphones, his actual voice filling her home with intimate menace. "I trust you slept well. I watched you all night." Bea forced herself to appear defeated, letting her shoulders slump and responding in a broken whisper. "What do you want from me, Derek?" "I want you to understand what you've done to this family. I want you to admit that you destroyed Marcus's relationships with people who actually cared about him." In the mobile command center, Detective Chen and Catherine Wells monitored the conversation, while technical specialists traced Derek's signal routing. The direct voice communication was a tactical error on Derek's part. It provided much better tracing opportunities than his previous text-based harassment. "You're right," Bea said, following the psychological manipulation script she had prepared. "I was selfish. I didn't understand how much I was hurting everyone." Derek's satisfaction was audible in his response. "Finally, some honesty. Now we can have a real conversation about making things right." Over the next several hours, Derek became increasingly talkative and controlling, exactly as Bea had predicted. His need to gloat and explain his superiority made him careless about operational security. He began revealing details about his surveillance methods, his months of preparation, and most crucially, his current location. "You have no idea how sophisticated this operation is," Derek bragged during one of their conversations. "I can see everything you do from my command center, multiple camera angles, audio from every room, complete control over your environment. It's like being God in your little digital world." "Where are you controlling everything from?" Bea asked, playing to his ego while police technicians worked frantically to narrow down his transmission source. "Somewhere you'll never find me, but close enough to visit if you disappoint me again." The psychological game continued throughout Friday, with Derek becoming more possessive and demanding with each interaction. He directed Bea's activities like a puppet master, telling her what to wear, what to eat, where to sit in her own house. Each command was designed to reinforce his dominance while degrading her sense of autonomy. But Derek's greatest mistake came Friday evening when Emma made an unexpected appearance on the surveillance feeds. Marcus had brought her by to collect some of her favorite toys, unaware that this was part of Derek's psychological manipulation. "Emma!" Derek's voice exploded from the speakers when the little girl entered the living room. "My sweet Emma, come closer to the camera so I can see how much you've grown." Emma, recognizing the voice that had been haunting her nightmares, began crying and ran to Marcus. But Derek's reaction to seeing her was so intense, so inappropriately emotional, that he began speaking without any filter about his obsession with her development. "I've watched her take her first steps, say her first words. I know her better than her own father does. I've documented every milestone, every growth moment. She's practically my daughter, too. The admission was exactly what police needed to establish the full scope of Derek's crimes against a minor. Catherine's monitoring equipment captured not just his words, but his emotional state, the dangerous obsession that had driven his campaign of terror. Saturday morning brought the endgame Derek had been building toward all along. He announced through the smart home system that Bea had earned a face-to-face meeting to discuss Emma's future. You're going to drive to these coordinates. Derek displayed GPS information on every screen in the house. The location was the Mount Hood cabin Bea had identified in her research. Come alone. No phones, no tracking devices. Just you and me having an honest conversation about what's best for Emma. And if I refuse? Bea asked, though she had no intention of refusing. This was the culmination of her trap. Then Emma will never be safe from me. I'll follow her to school, to playgrounds, to friends' houses. I'll document every moment of her childhood, whether you cooperate or not. But if you come talk to me like a reasonable person, maybe we can reach an understanding. The threat was explicit enough to justify immediate law enforcement action. Detective Chen coordinated with FBI cybercrime specialists and Oregon State Police tactical teams to prepare for a simultaneous arrest operation at the cabin and protective custody for Emma. But Derek had one final surprise that nearly destroyed everything. As Bea prepared to leave for the cabin Saturday afternoon, every device in her house began playing audio recordings of Emma's voice. Not distressed crying this time, but happy sounds, giggling, singing, talking to her toys. Hours of intimate family moments that Derek had stolen and curated into a psychological weapon. Listen to how happy she sounds when she doesn't know adults are fighting. This is what childhood should sound like. This is what I can give her if you stop poisoning her against her real family. The implications were sickening. Derek had constructed a fantasy where he was Emma's protector rather than her stalker, where his surveillance was benevolent rather than predatory. This level of delusion made him far more dangerous than a simple revenge-seeking hacker.
Catherine's final technical analysis revealed the full scope of Derek's digital infrastructure. He had created a sophisticated command center in the remote cabin, with multiple internet connections, powerful computers, and enough surveillance equipment to monitor dozens of targets simultaneously. He's not just stalking your family, Catherine explained as Bea prepared for the final confrontation. We found evidence that he's been running surveillance operations on at least 12 other women. This is his business model, professional stalking disguised as cybersecurity consulting. The drive to Mount Hood felt like traveling through a tunnel toward an inevitable collision. Bea was heavily monitored by law enforcement, GPS tracking devices hidden throughout her vehicle, emergency communication equipment, and tactical teams positioned at strategic points along the route. But she was also aware that Derek's deteriorating mental state made him unpredictable. His obsession with Emma, combined with his delusions about being her protector, could trigger violent responses if he felt cornered. The cabin was exactly as Bea had envisioned, isolated, heavily equipped with technological gear, and surrounded by the kind of natural barriers that would make escape difficult. Derek had chosen his final stronghold well, but his psychological need for face-to-face confrontation had also made him vulnerable to capture. Derek was waiting on the cabin's front porch when Bea arrived, looking nothing like the controlled professional man she had confronted at his office. His hair was unkempt, his clothes wrinkled, and his eyes had the manic intensity of someone who had spent too many hours staring at surveillance screens in isolation. "You came," he said, almost surprised. "I wasn't sure you understood how serious this situation is." "I understand that you're sick, Derek. I understand that you need help. I need Emma to be safe from people who don't appreciate her," Derek replied, his voice taking on that dreamy, possessive quality that had become so disturbing. "You've seen what I can do with technology. Imagine what I can provide for her education, her development, her future." The conversation that followed was the most terrifying of Bea's life, not because Derek threatened violence, but because his delusions about Emma were so profound that he genuinely believed he was offering to save her from inadequate parenting.
But Derek had made one final fatal error in his psychological warfare campaign. His need to demonstrate complete control led him to show Bea his elaborate surveillance setup inside the cabin. Dozens of monitors displaying live feeds from multiple homes, detailed files on various women and children, and recording equipment that had captured thousands of hours of private family moments. "This is how you protect the people you love," Derek explained, gesturing to his digital command center with pride. "Complete awareness, total security, constant vigilance." What Derek didn't know was that every word of his confession was being recorded by FBI equipment. Every image on his monitors was being photographed as evidence, and every detail of his operation was being documented for federal prosecution. The arrest happened so quickly and professionally that Derek barely had time to register what was occurring. FBI tactical specialists breached the cabin from multiple entry points simultaneously, while Oregon State Police secured the perimeter. Derek's reaction was not fear or anger, but confusion, as if he genuinely couldn't understand why law enforcement would interfere with what he saw as family protection services. "You don't understand," Derek kept repeating as federal agents secured his equipment and read him his rights. "I was keeping them safe. I was documenting everything for their own protection." The evidence seized from Derek's cabin was overwhelming. Digital forensics revealed detailed surveillance of multiple families, financial records showing payments for domestic intelligence services, and detailed psychological profiles of his victims that demonstrated premeditated stalking campaigns. Most damning were Derek's own notes about Emma, written in a journal he kept to document what he called developmental monitoring. The entries revealed months of obsessive observation, inappropriate emotional attachment, and detailed plans for inserting himself into her daily care routines. Derek Mitchell was ultimately charged with multiple federal crimes: cyberstalking, computer fraud, wiretapping, child endangerment, and violation of privacy laws. The evidence was so comprehensive that he accepted a plea agreement rather than face trial, receiving a 15-year federal sentence with mandatory psychiatric treatment. But for Bea, the real victory was simpler and more profound. Emma was safe. Their home belonged to them again. And the nightmare that had consumed their lives for months was finally over. 6 months later, Bea and Emma moved to a new house across town, one with minimal smart home technology and maximum traditional security features. Emma's nightmares gradually faded, and her natural curiosity about the world slowly returned. Bea kept one piece of smart home technology, a simple security camera at the front door, not because she was afraid, but because she had learned that knowledge and preparation were her best defenses against those who would use technology as a weapon. The technology hadn't been the enemy. The enemy had been the person controlling it. And now he was gone forever. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.